think a lot of times people get onto this discussion of ethics versus morality.
Mhm.
But I think they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because, they were talking about in the text, like the decisions that leaders have to make in order to kind of not fall victim to their own personal gains. And it reminded me, just there was that story on the news maybe 3 weeks ago about how Wells Fargo, I don't know if you guys remember, had to pay the federal government, if they were fined like millions of dollars because a few years ago they were rewarding all of their employees to set up new accounts, which seems fair and logical, but then all the employees set up hundreds of thousands of fake bank accounts just in order to get their bonuses. So
Right.
there's an example right there about, using some sort of reward for your own personal gain and then making the wrong choice.
Well, I think that came that I saw that the other day, and I just shook my head, and then I got a letter from my Wells Fargo account saying they were going to send me money. I'm like, well, I just joined Wells Fargo, so I'll take any kind of free money you give me. That
That's so
came from the top.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that came
really
from the top.
interesting.
The higher ups, the VPs, and the presidents actually started that crap because they were getting big bonuses at the end of the year for new open accounts.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they had to pay back. I think the CEO or something like that paid back what, $43 million.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that is nuts. And you're
Wow.
right. Who was the one that said ethics it's similar to basically the moral code? Angelina, it was you, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing that the book says is like the first component of ethics is moral sensitivity. Like
Yeah.
morals are a big part of how you define ethics.
Yeah. I read a story. Was it this one? Maybe it was this one. Maybe the other chapter. They were talking about, the thing with ethics is this. We all think of ethics in a different way. So all five of us were basically, if I had you girls write something down about ethics or what you personally thought it was, just 2 sentences, it would be totally different across the board. Almost totally different across the board. But the basic, foundation of that is your moral code, and your foundation. Are you willing to live with making $20 million and treating people like crap and stepping on them and abusing them just to make that money? Are you going to be okay with that? Are you going to be, okay to gyp somebody just for that one deal and never see them again? It's basically what you could get, what you can get away with, and what you could live with. Like when we do business overseas, that's one of our biggest things. My brother and I, and this is I learned from my brother. Is if people look look shifty, we don't do business with them. And you're talking about people that we deal with are generals, colonels, senators, congressmen, and everybody always have their hand out. As successful as our business is in the Philippines, we still pull away from a lot of business because of that. And we always, when we talk about ethics in our class, when we teach, we always tell them, it comes from your moral compass, but also your spirituality. It has nothing to do with religion. Your spirituality is what tells you, what really truly runs your core and tells you whether you're doing good or you're doing bad. If your spirituality is corrupted, you're going to be able to live with all your wrong decisions until you're about to die, and then you ask God for forgiveness, as usual, as human beings usually do. So it's all that is connected to what you can and cannot live with.
I thought it was interesting when the book was talking about keeping people around you that will tell you the truth and hold you accountable. Like, you kind of see that a lot. Like, people have their close advisors, but they don't really speak up sometimes when maybe you're starting to go down the wrong path. And I think it's important that when you're in a leadership position, you have, even if they're not in your group or in your team, but you have those sort of advisors and real friends who will be like, hey, you should kind of check yourself because you're seen as your perception. I think the book mentioned that, like, to check your perception versus reality with other people. Like, you start to think about something long enough that you start to believe it, but then someone else tells you, hey, you're way off base here. You're going down the wrong path, and I think that's important to keep yourself accountable.
The problem, it's not that it's a problem with that. That is the perfect thing you should do. What happens is people's egos, say the CEO's ego when he was down here and making his company or building his company was, all family oriented at one point. And then if you don't keep your ego in check, you inflate. And then at that point, you don't even listen to your advisors or the people close to you. I'll tell you a quick story. One of the most successful companies out here in Scottsdale. These two brothers, their father always pit them against each other to the point where they don't even like each other anymore. If one built a 20,000 square foot house, the other one built a 22,000 square foot house. They build a successful corporation that will go down in history as saving lives and stuff like that. They changed humanity. Both of them did. And now they barely talk to each other because one wants to do things one way, one wants to do things the other, and they do not listen to their advisors. The only person they listened to was my big brother. My big brother was the only one that could ever walk in there and yell at both of them like they were little kids. Until my big brother just finally had enough and retired from that company, opened up his own company. But it's good to have people that tell you the truth. But when your ego gets inflated, it's something for you girls as you move up the ladder. And you'll see it if you haven't seen it yet. Is a lot of bosses like kiss asses.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like that yes sir, yes ma'am person. And that's what ruins companies. So you should have somebody that will always tell you the truth. The problem is they're far few in between because people don't want to get fired or let go.
Well, that's what they were talking about in the book about being. You also have the ethics of being a follower too. To not go along, to speak up, and that's exactly what you were saying.
Yeah. People think that just being a follower, it means that you have to do everything your bosses tell you. Okay. I was in the Marine Corps for almost a decade. I was in the State Department, for 6-7 years. And I would follow my leaders or I would follow my supervisors, but I wouldn't corrupt myself to do something that was wrong just because they told me to do it. You as a human being have got to know what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
Even if you should always stand up for your beliefs. You can't blame people for things you did.
Right.
When we had a company, we used to build cell phone towers, and it's pretty dangerous to have people climbing up on a 200-foot tower. So, but it's also pretty expensive to do all the safety items that you're supposed to. And 10 years ago, companies that were small they just take shortcuts because it meant, well, I'm not going to buy all the newest harnesses and ropes and send my people to yearly training. And you have to make that choice. Well, is it better for your bottom line, or can you sleep at night knowing that you're not putting your employees in harm's way, that you are making the right choice, even if it costs a little bit more? That was always difficult.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought that up, sweetie, because at the end of the day, now that over here in Arizona, how minimum wage went up, now you're going to find a lot of small businesses that can't handle getting paid people $12 an hour, and will cut. Some of those companies will cut corners to keep that profit, just keep those things. It's human nature, at the end of the day. Even with big corporations, they do the same thing, But again, it goes back to what your moral code and your ethics of what you can and cannot live with. Sooner or later, you're gonna have to answer for all this. So, we in our companies, we don't allow, if you make an extra 50 cents off a body armor plate off a police officer, we'll fire your ass.
Yeah.
We'll cut you at the knees real quick and should kick you. As my big brother likes to say. So we run basically a nice military style companies because we believe, that you don't put people in harm's way, or you don't try to make so much money when you don't have to, when everybody's making money across the board equally. If we catch anybody lying to police, to military, to our customers, we give them one warning. After that, we kick them out. That's the way my brother and his two partners, the Colonel and Tom, run the company, and that's the way it should be. It sounds harsh, you hire people because you want to, give somebody that's qualified for this job. They have a livelihood, they have family and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we can't have you because it's our reputation on the line.
Well, that's a big part of it, reputation.
I was gonna say, like, it's interesting, having people who have the same ethics as leaders, but I kind of work in a place where, of course, we have like our general manager, but we also have several tiers of managers. And sometimes it's like their ethics don't necessarily align, like so they lead in different ways based on whatever their ethics or moral codes are. So it's a little bit more interesting in that aspect, I think.
And that starts from the top.
Exactly.
That's always starts from the top. And I will always say this. And if I take 3 more leadership classes, I will always say this. Leadership starts from the top.
Yeah, you have to
communicate.
You have to set, if you're the leader, you have to set the standard for the moral code yourself. You can't expect people to do the right thing and make the right choices while behind their back you're doing the opposite for yourself. Like it's like the CEOs who are making millions and millions of dollars in profits, but yet the company isn't doing well and the employees are being forced to not get raises. So how do you reconcile that in your own head? I don't know how they do it.
Right.
Telling people that's okay. Are you talking or are you just moving your lips? You are moving your lips. I've caught you a few times moving your lips, and I wasn't sure if you were talking to us or talking to somebody else.
We'll have to translate her text for her.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, between being an active.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now,
good.
Okay. What I was saying is it's like the CEO of Wells Fargo, because all these bankers were doing all these fake accounts, and then they had whistleblowers, and then those people actually got fired even though they were supposed to call the ethics line, and then they called the ethics line, and then they get fired because they tattled. So, and now they have all these commercials saying that you can trust Wells Fargo, even though they did
You
such
really
a ridiculous thing.
Yeah, they're trying to rebuild their character. You're absolutely right. I saw that same commercial.
How can you fire the whistleblower though?
What?
How can, like, we have like obviously whistleblower stuff in my work, but like those people were the ones that were getting in trouble because they were complaining?
Yeah, they got fired because they complained. So
Wow.
they have like the retaliation laws that you're not supposed to, you can't fire someone if they tell the truth.
Right.
So that's why there's such a big issue with it.
They'll go back into their personal files and dig something up saying this is the reason she wasn't fired because she whistleblew or he whistleblew. We finally got rid of them because they did this wrong or they did that wrong.
And that's a big part of why a lot of people won't say anything, because they know spotlight's going to be on them. They'll find the one thing that you did that maybe wasn't perfect, and that's why.
I'm pretty sure
they'll
sue.
They said they fired them because they showed up late to work, which I think.
Oh my
so
gosh.
finding any excuse that makes it okay.
That's just the way it is. Even though they'll pay back millions and millions and millions of dollars, they still don't want them in their company at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Even though they did the right thing.
That wraps up our time.
All right.